Picture it, tens of thousands of screaming fans packed into a state-of-the-art NFL stadium, the air just crackling with energy. Now picture a gleaming super yacht, a floating palace gliding through the world's most exclusive waters, and then a global manufacturing powerhouse with nearly 70 factories on multiple continents, making a critical part for the world's biggest car brands.
This is LuxeMind Tactics, where the wealth mindset meets luxury living.
This is the world of Shahid Khan, a world of immense wealth, influence, and success. But now, strip it all away, cut from the roaring stadium to the clang of metal on porcelain, from the luxury yacht to the smell of dish soap and leftover food. Before he was one of the richest people on the planet, before he owned the Jacksonville Jaguars, before the multi-billion-dollar empire that made him a household name, he was a 16-year-old immigrant with just $500 in his pocket. And his very first job in America? Washing dishes for $1.20 an hour. This is the incredible story of how Shahid Khan redefined the American dream. Way before the private jets and magazine covers, there was just a boy in Lahore, Pakistan. Born in 1950, Shahid Khan grew up in a comfortable, middle-class family. His world wasn't one of poverty, but it was one of ambition. His mother was a mathematics professor, and his father was an entrepreneur. It was a household that valued education and hard work, principles that were baked into young Shahid's upbringing. For a bright, ambitious kid like Shahid, growing up in a young country still finding its footing, the stories filtering across the ocean from America were intoxicating. It was a land of seemingly endless opportunity, a place where engineering and innovation were building a new world. It was the place he knew he had to be. The decision for a 16-year-old to leave his family and travel halfway around the world to a country where he knew absolutely no one is monumental, that takes a kind of focus and determination that most people just don't have. For Khan, this wasn't just a whim, it was a calculated move. He wasn't running from something, he was running towards a very specific goal: to study industrial engineering at the University of Illinois, one of the best programs in the world. His family supported his dream and helped him get there. But once he landed, he was completely on his own. He was stepping off that plane, not just into a new country, but into a new life, one he alone would have to build from the ground up. The year was 1967. A 16-year-old Shahid Khan steps off a plane and into the heartland of America, Urbana-Champaign, Illinois. The culture shock hit him like a physical blow. The language, the food, the pace of life, everything was different. And it was cold. Illinois greeted him with one of the worst blizzards in its history, a brutal introduction to his new home. His first night wasn't spent in a cozy dorm room, nope. It was at the local YMCA, in a room that cost $2 a night. He had $500 in his pocket, meant to be his lifeline for his American dream, in a huge, unfamiliar country that money felt like both a fortune and terrifyingly little. The pressure was on. He wasn't just a student, he was a solitary venture, and he was his only investor. Failure simply wasn't an option. There was no safety net, no family to call for a quick loan. There was only the challenge in front of him and the stark reality that his survival depended entirely on his own two hands. He learned a fundamental truth very quickly. His education had a price tag, and he was the one who had to pay it. The dream of becoming an engineer was chained to the cold, hard reality of tuition, rent, and food. So the day after he arrived, the boy who would one day own an NFL team went looking for a job. Any job. He found one in the back of a local restaurant's kitchen. It wasn't glamorous, it was hot, steamy, and loud. The job, washing dishes, the pay, $1.20 an hour. For a lot of people, this would be a soul-crushing dead-end job, a sign you've hit rock bottom. But for Shahid Khan, that dish pit was a classroom. He would later say that first job gave him a sense of empowerment, the feeling that he could actually control his own destiny. Think about the mindset that requires. While his hands were scrubbing pots and pans, his mind was observing, learning, and hardening. Every hour he worked was another $1.20 toward his freedom, his education, and the future he had imagined back in Lahore. He wasn't just a dishwasher. He was the CEO of a one-man company. The product was his time and labor, and the profits were being reinvested directly into the company's main asset, his brain. This job was his first real lesson in American capitalism. It was a direct transaction, effort for reward. There were no shortcuts. The dishes wouldn't wash themselves. If he worked, he got paid. If he got paid, he could stay in school. If he stayed in school, he could become an engineer. It was a simple, brutal, and beautiful equation. The experience forged a work ethic that would become the foundation of his entire career. He learned the value of a dollar because he earned it under the toughest, most unglamorous conditions. He learned that no job was beneath him if it served a higher purpose. The humility and the grind of that kitchen didn't break him. They built him. He was a philosopher in the dish pit, thinking not about the meaning of life, but about the mechanics of success. And he concluded it was built one clean plate, one earned dollar at a time. So Shahid Khan began living a double life. By night, a laborer with hands raw from hot water and soap. By day, a student at a top engineering school wrestling with complex formulas and theories of industrial efficiency. The contrast is just staggering. But he didn't just survive this insane schedule, he thrived in it. Eager to fit in and understand his new culture, he joined a fraternity, Beta Theta Pi. It was in that frat house basement, watching football games with his new American friends, that another seed was planted, a love for the uniquely American chaos of the NFL. It was a world away from the cricket he grew up with, and it fascinated him. He had no idea he wasn't just watching a game. He was looking at his own future. His engineering studies weren't just abstract. They were the entire reason he was putting himself through sleepless nights and grueling work. And soon, his education and his job were about to collide in a way that would change his life forever. While still a student, he landed a new job at a local auto parts manufacturer called LuxeMind. The company made parts for trucks. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a real engineering environment. Khan was no longer just washing dishes. He was now inside the machine, and he was about to find a flaw in its design that nobody else seemed to see. Working at LuxeMind while still in school was a total game changer. It was the first time his academic knowledge had a real-world playground. He wasn't just clocking in and out. His engineer's brain was always on, always analyzing. He watched the processes, studied the designs, and learned the auto parts business from the inside. When he graduated in 1971 with his degree in industrial engineering, the company knew what they had. They didn't let him go. They promoted him. Shahid Khan became the engineering director for LuxeMind. This was a huge step. The kid who'd shown up a few years earlier with nothing was now a university-educated engineer in a management role. For most people, this is the happy ending to the story. He'd achieved the American dream, a great education, and a respectable, well-paying job. He could have just settled in and lived a comfortable, conventional life. But Shahid Khan's ambition wasn't conventional. He wasn't wired to just manage a system. He was wired to perfect it, and if he had to, completely reinvent it. And as engineering director, he had a front-row seat to a major problem in the auto industry, a problem everyone else just accepted as the way things are. The problem was the truck bumper. Back then, bumpers on most pickup trucks were clunky, heavy, and inefficient. They were usually slapped together from multiple pieces of steel, sometimes 7, 8, or more, that were stamped and then welded. This process was expensive and time-consuming, and it created weak spots. The seams where the pieces were joined were magnets for rust and corrosion. As a design, they were an afterthought. As a manufactured part, they were a headache. Khan, with his training in industrial engineering, looked at this multi-piece bumper and saw nothing but pure waste. Wasted material, wasted labor, wasted potential. Why, he wondered, couldn't a bumper be made from a single continuous piece of steel? A seamless design would be stronger, lighter, more durable, and way, way cheaper to make. It would eliminate the welding, the labor, and the rust points all in one shot. It was a revolutionary idea hiding in plain sight. This wasn't just a small improvement, it was a total rethinking of a common part. A lighter bumper meant better fuel efficiency. A simpler manufacturing process meant lower costs for the carmaker. A stronger, seamless design meant a better product for the customer. It was a win-win-win. This was the spark. The million-dollar idea, born not in a fancy R&D lab, but in the practical, analytical mind of a man trained to hunt down and eliminate inefficiency, he had found a better way. Now, he just had to convince the world. Excited by his breakthrough, Khan did what any loyal engineering director would do. He took his idea straight to the leadership at LuxeMind. He laid out the whole vision, the cost savings, the superior quality, the edge it would give them over the competition. He expected them to be jumping for joy. They were not. Management shot the idea down. Maybe it was too radical. Maybe they were too stuck in their ways. Whatever the reason, they passed on what would become a multi-billion-dollar innovation. This was a crossroads for Khan, the kind of moment every entrepreneur faces. Do you accept the no from your bosses and let the idea die? Or do you bet on yourself? What would you have done? Faced with that rejection, would you have the guts to go it alone? Shahid Khan made his choice. If his company wouldn't build the future, he would. In 1978, he walked away from the security of his director-level job. He took his entire life savings, around $16,000, and got a $50,000 loan from the U.S. Small Business Administration. With that, he started his own company. He called it Bumper Works. It was a massive risk. He was leaving a guaranteed salary to compete directly with his old employer, armed with nothing but an idea he believed in. But his first fight wasn't for customers. It was in a courtroom. LuxeMind immediately sued him for stealing trade secrets. Khan, pouring every penny into his new business, couldn't afford fancy lawyers. Legend has it, he hired the cheapest attorney he could find to stall, while he spent his nights in the library teaching himself law to help with his own defense. He was an engineer, an entrepreneur, and now a self-taught lawyer, fighting for his company's life before it had sold a single bumper. And against all odds, he won. The lawsuit failed, but it cost him precious time and money. Now, the real work could start. With the lawsuit over, Khan was free to build his business. But Bumper Works was a tiny fish in an ocean of sharks. The auto industry was ruled by the big three in Detroit: GM, Ford, and Chrysler. They had their established suppliers, huge companies with decades-long relationships. Getting them to even listen to a tiny, unproven upstart from Illinois was a nearly impossible task. The early days were a relentless grind. Khan was the chief engineer, head salesman, finance department, and probably the janitor. He poured everything into perfecting his process and trying to get a foot in the door. He started small, making custom bumpers for body shops. It was a niche market, but it paid the bills and proved his one-piece bumper actually worked. He pitched his idea relentlessly to the big three, but the doors to Detroit stayed slammed shut, rejection after rejection. It's a familiar story for entrepreneurs, but that doesn't make it any less painful. Every no drained his limited funds and tested his resolve. He knew he had a better product, but he just couldn't break into the club. It looked like his brilliant idea might die on the vine, starved of the one thing it needed, a major customer. Just when it seemed like the American auto giants would never give him a shot, an opportunity came from a completely different direction. While Detroit was saying no, a Japanese automaker was quietly carving out a space in the American market. That company was Toyota. In the early 1980s, Toyota was expanding its US operations with a reputation for efficiency, quality, and a willingness to try new things. They were making small, nimble pickup trucks and needed suppliers. Unlike the giants in Detroit, Toyota was an outsider itself and more open to working with other outsiders. When Shahid Khan showed them his lightweight single-piece bumper, they didn't see a risk. They saw an advantage. Khan's design was a perfect match for Toyota's philosophy. It was more efficient, higher quality, and cheaper. In 1984, Khan finally landed his first contract with a major automaker, supplying a small number of bumpers for Toyota pickups. It wasn't a huge order, but it was the crack in the dam he had been fighting so hard for. This partnership was the turning point. Having Toyota as a client was a stamp of approval that carried enormous weight. Khan dedicated himself to serving his new customer, even adopting Toyota's own legendary manufacturing principles, the Toyota way, to make his own company even better. He proved he could deliver a superior product on time and on budget. Soon the small orders grew into larger ones. By 1987, he was the only supplier for Toyota's pickups. The outsider had finally broken through. The rejections from the big three didn't matter anymore. He had found a partner who shared his vision, and together they were about to take the industry by storm. The story of Shahid Khan's breakthrough is a powerful lesson in never giving up. He got rejected by the biggest players in the game, but found success by looking where nobody else was. If you're finding this story inspiring, take a second to subscribe and hit that notification bell. We've got a lot more stories of incredible entrepreneurs who defied the odds, and you don't want to miss them. Now, back to how Khan turned this one victory into a global empire. You know what they say about success being the best revenge? As Bumper Works grew, thanks to its partnership with Toyota, a funny thing was happening to Khan's old employer, the company that had rejected his idea and tried to sue him out of business. FlexEngate was struggling. Then, in 1980, just 2 years after Khan left to start Bumper Works, an unbelievable opportunity came up. His old boss was looking to sell the company, and Khan, now the successful owner of a thriving competitor, was in a position to buy. In a move that feels like it was ripped from a movie script, Shahid Khan bought his old company. He purchased the very firm that had underestimated him, the place where he started as an employee, and merged it with Bumper Works. Just imagine that moment. The feeling of walking back into that building, not as an employee, but as the owner. The man whose idea was once dismissed now owned the whole show. It was the ultimate vindication. But it wasn't an act of revenge. It was an act of brilliant business logic. He didn't just buy a rival. He acquired its infrastructure and brand name, folding his more innovative company into it to create something new and powerful. He even kept the name FlexEngate. But now it was powered by his vision, his technology, and his relentless drive. The student hadn't just surpassed the master, he had bought the entire school. With the acquisition done and the Toyota partnership booming, the new FlexEngate exploded. The company's sales went through the roof. Khan's one-piece bumper became the new industry standard, and soon the same Detroit automakers who had once shut the door on him were lining up to become customers. FlexEngate started supplying bumpers and other parts to Ford, GM, and pretty much every other major car company in the world. The growth was absolutely mind-blowing. Khan expanded aggressively, opening new factories across the US and then around the world, in China, Mexico, Spain, and beyond. From a single idea and a small loan, he had built a global manufacturing juggernaut. Today, FlexEngate is one of the largest privately owned companies in America, with revenues in the billions. It employs over 25,000 people in more than 69 facilities worldwide. It's a titan of the auto industry. Shahid Khan hadn't just built a successful company, he had built an industrial empire and in the process fundamentally changed how cars are made. His net worth soared, making him one of the wealthiest people on earth. He had proven beyond any doubt that his vision was right all along. With his business empire secure and generating incredible wealth, Shahid Khan could have easily retired. But his ambition was far from satisfied, and that little dream that began in his fraternity basement, watching football with his friends, was about to become a reality. In 2011, Khan agreed to buy the Jacksonville Jaguars, an NFL team that was struggling at the time. The NFL owners unanimously approved the deal for a price of around $770 million. On January 4th, 2012, the sale was final, and Shahid Khan made history. He became the first ethnic minority owner of an NFL team. Think about that. The immigrant kid who learned about football in a frat house now owned a piece of the league. It was a powerful statement about how the American dream itself had evolved, and he didn't stop there. A year later, in 2013, he expanded his sports portfolio by purchasing the historic English soccer club, Fulham FC. His approach to sports ownership was the same as his business philosophy. He invested in facilities, modernized operations, and committed to building a winning culture, all while promising to keep the Jaguars in Jacksonville. His presence in the sports world became a constant, visible reminder of his incredible journey. As the 2000s were ending, the Khan Empire expanded into yet another arena: professional wrestling. This time, the venture was spearheaded by his son, Tony Khan, a lifelong, passionate wrestling fan. Together, they spotted an opportunity in a market that had been dominated by one company, WWE, for decades. In 2019, Shahid and Tony Khan co-founded All Elite Wrestling, or AEW. It was an incredibly bold move, directly challenging an established monopoly. Much like Bumper Works took on the giants of the auto parts industry, AEW took on the giant of sports entertainment. They invested heavily, signed a mix of wrestling legends and new stars, and landed major TV deals. AEW was an immediate hit, quickly becoming a popular and legitimate competitor to WWE, praised by fans for its focus on the in-ring product. It proved that the entrepreneurial fire in the Khan family wasn't just limited to one generation. Shahid Khan had not only built his own empire, but had empowered his son to build a new one, disrupting yet another industry and adding another billion-dollar asset to the family's portfolio. The dishwasher's legacy was now spawning new empires of its own. From a 16-year-old boy scrubbing dishes for pocket money to a multi-billionaire tycoon, Shahid Khan's life is more than just a success story. It's a testament to an idea. It's a story that starts in Lahore, Pakistan, takes root in a steamy Illinois kitchen, finds its genius in a simple piece of curved steel, and goes on to conquer the worlds of global manufacturing and professional sports. He's the man who was told no by the biggest companies in America, only to build a company so successful he could buy his old employer. He's the man who shattered barriers, becoming the first person of color to own an NFL team, a symbol of progress in the league he fell in love with as a young immigrant. In 2012, Forbes magazine put him on their cover with a simple title, "The Face of the American Dream." And maybe that's his most important legacy. In a time of cynicism, his story is a roaring, undeniable testament to the fact that the American dream, the belief that with hard work, a good idea, and relentless grit, you can rise from anywhere to achieve anything, is alive and well. Shahid Khan's journey proves that your starting point doesn't have to be your destination. Stories like Shahid Khan's are a powerful reminder of what a single person can accomplish with a great idea and unwavering determination. If you want to see more deep dives into the men and women who defied expectations and shaped our world, make sure you're subscribed and drop a comment below. Let us know which entrepreneur's story you want us to cover next. Thanks for watching.